I'm Nestor Licanto, and today our guests are the Senior Advisor for the Lou and Josh campaign, Ginger Cruz, UOG Professor, Dr. Ron McNinch, and the Chairman of the Republican Party of Guam, Mr. Juan Carlos Benitez. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Glad to be here.
All right, this week we're going to start off with some bigger issues. I wanted to start off with the North Korean missile launches. I mean, that's something that's drawn a lot of concern, both here and in Washington. Let me start with you, Juan Carlos, because you and I were talking about this earlier. Can you, first of all, go over what you have been following over the last week or so with respect to what North Korea did and what the U.S. and how the U.S. and Japan responded?
Yeah. So North Korea first fired mid-range missile and launched it over Japan for 2,800 miles. That's significant to Guam, and it's a message to the United States because Guam's only 2,200 miles from North Korea. So that means that missile can not only reach Guam, it can surpass Guam. With that, the United States diverted their airplane carrier and started doing exercises near the North Korea border, and they did some bombing exercises. Which was then answered back by North Korea, who has now done bombing exercises on their own on the southern border of North Korea, which is their border with South Korea. Then the CIA has just informed the United States that the intelligence capability in North Korea has eroded to the point that they can no longer confirm if there's any nuclear exercises taking place inside North Korea. But the expectation right now on the escalation level is that North Korea is about to do a nuclear test inside the country, which is their next level to show that they can now put it inside the rocket. So very concerning, very powerful issues. Even CNN reported about the concerns about Guam and the people of Guam. I'm just surprised I haven't heard a word from our governor or this administration to the people or even to the federal government to say just need to make sure that we're taken care of.
Ginger?
So this is part of the long-range plan of Kim Jong-un. I mean, this is something that has been in the works. It's his 10th anniversary in power, and this has been his plan all along, to become a nuclear power. When the talks broke down with President Trump, there was this sort of restraint that we saw North Korea holding on to, and they've seen that the engagement in the Ukraine and the engagement with China have sort of distracted everybody. So it's his time to make his point known. So, I mean, there's a couple of things going on. You've got this perceived provocation because the USS Strike Group with the carrier Ronald Reagan is in the area. And so between that, the fact that the vice president went to the DMZ, all of these things are sort of ramping up this question of, is he going to establish himself, Kim Jong-un, as a nuclear power, which clearly he wants to do. And really, I mean, all of the experts at this point don't seem to think that there's any backing off of that. It seems to be escalating, which is concerning. The United States is putting more and more of a show on to ensure that everybody knows that they're serious about protecting the Pacific. But at the same time, that's only encouraging Kim Jong-un to do more tests. I mean, he's done the most tests of any of the years that he's been there. I mean, there's been 24 tests so far this year. So that's significant. Now for Guam, I mean, why is he doing this? He's not actually going to hit Guam. The reason he's doing this is because he wants to establish himself as a nuclear power, like India, like Pakistan. He wants to say, I have a nuclear weapon that's capable of hitting the United States, that's capable of pretty much hitting a lot of different areas. And so it's bigger than just Guam. It's this huge strategic statement by North Korea. And the silver lining on that is, as a result, it is going to strengthen the United States' commitment to building up its presence in the Pacific, which for Guam means much more build-up, much more attention, much more economic development, a lot more in the way of exercises. Our hotels are going to be full, and we're going to have a lot of Australian and regional Asian partners coming to Guam in the next couple of years.
I know Juan Carlos wants to jump in here. And the last time there was this kind of an escalation, similar escalation, was back when President Trump was in office and Governor Calvo was. Is there a difference between how the Republicans back then and the Democrats now are facing this?
Oh, absolutely. And when Kim Jong said that he would shoot a rocket near the waters of Guam, President Trump stated he will be received by fire and fury if you do that. That's an attack against us. And then when they said that they were going to throw a rocket across Japan, he reminded them that we had a bilateral agreement of mutual defense, and that as far as he was concerned, that would also be impacting the agreement. Kim Jong restrained, and we ended up in negotiations, and we got the bully to stop. We have now a president that is so weak, and he's saying, "Oh, we're concerned. We're going to look at it. Let me just move some training exercises near there." Unless you're very clear to a dictator about what's going on and what they need to face, they will continue to advance and continue to do the efforts they're doing. This is very serious. This is not a joke. When they're saying they're going to hit America, they're saying they're going to hit Guam. And that's where they can hit. So we need to be aware of it. We need to be interested. You do say about the increased military presence in Guam. I do agree if they can move expeditiously. But when we're fighting with the Department of Defense about where they're going to put their missile system, when we're trying to renegotiate the programmatic agreement again and delay and slow the process, the federal government's already entering conversations with Palau, with the Philippines and other countries to start diversifying the equipment that they're going to need to put in this region. So that's a reality that is happening, and we need to be aware of it. So you need a governor that's going to be a friend to the Department of Defense as well as a congressman.
Ron, let me get Ron in first. Ron, do you see a difference in the response between the Republicans and Democrats, both nationally and locally?
Well, last week, Vice President Harris said that the United States was in alliance with North Korea. Of course, yes, at the DMZ speech. I don't know if you caught that. That was part of the news. Of course, she made a gaffe. She made a mistake, but it kind of shows you how limited some of the views on North Korea are. A lot of times they do these things to get attention, and you see they get nothing if they actually do anything, but they get, for attention-seeking reasons, they get China, they get the U.S., they get the attention like the crying baby gets the bottle. That's what they're doing, is they're doing these things to get leverage. And I do agree, this is, for the U.S. military standpoint, it does remind us just how important the United States military is to Guam.
Ginger, real quick before we go to break.
Yeah, so the one thing that's important to remember is this administration, I mean, we don't control American foreign policy. And we also don't need to scare the people of Guam. I mean, North Korea is not going to throw a rocket at Guam. That's not going to happen. So getting everybody ramped up or making a political point is not something that they're going to do. They're in excellent constant communication with the military on Guam, with the military in the States, and we understand that this is all part of a greater strategic, long-range showing of what position North Korea wants. And the final thing is, they're talking about all the stuff that Trump did. He ended up doing nothing except keeping his love letters from Kim Jong-un hidden in his Mar-a-Lago estate. But I mean, frankly, literally nothing happened under Trump. He was all words and like bluster and and all it does is escalation when you have this war of words.
The event.
So,
all right, we're going to have to take a short break. On that note, the love letters at Mar-a-Lago. We'll be right back with a lot more. Please stay with us. All right, we're back, everyone, and let's move on to the next topic. We wanted to talk about the Chinese illegal immigrants real quickly. Yesterday, we reported that they came in actually from the other side of the coast. Typically, they have been coming in from the Retidian side. Right. Yesterday, Pago Bay, they're figuring out that they got to go around to get here, but that's very concerning though, because it hasn't stopped. And Ginger, let me start with you. What about this response? How are we? The task force was created, but it apparently it's not stopping them from coming in.
So the fundamental problem is Guam is an unincorporated territory. And so the sole responsibility for immigration on our borders is with the federal government. And the governor has taken it all the way up to the undersecretary of the Department of Homeland Security in the strongest possible terms. And you know what the feds have said in this case? They said, well, these people were vetted for their visas before they went to the CNMI. And so if they're just traveling between the CNMI and Guam, which is between two U.S. destinations, and we know these guys aren't spies or criminals because they've already been vetted and were given legal immigration into the CNMI, there's not a lot that we're going to do. So the pressure is being put on the federal government, but I mean, how many times have we seen in Guam, you can put as much pressure as you like, and if the federal government just refuses to take action, it's a problem. So the governor's using every possible weapon that she has locally. We're going after, under local statute, we're going after the boat owners, we're going after every single possible angle. But at the end of the day, the federal government is the one that controls this. We have no authority to supersede the federal control of our borders. And so it's a huge problem with the federal government.
Juan Carlos, you're an attorney. What would the Republican response be?
Look at Section 287G of IRCA, or the Immigration Reform Act, that allows the local state government to ask for the authority to enforce immigration statutes and laws in their jurisdiction. Almost every single border states in the United States applies that. Even cities in the border areas have applied for it. Guam refuses to apply for it. I know under a Republican administration we would. Number two, you get to determine who you're going to deputize or you're going to use. In states like Virginia, they deputized the correction officers, and they went after every person that had committed a rape against a child, and every illegal alien was deported out of the United States. And then they went after people that had committed rape and or had murder with weapons. In our case, we're using custom officers. We don't have that many. They're supposed to be dealing with our drugs and our borders. In the past, we've activated our National Guard. Let's activate our National Guard to deal with this problem. That's more of a crisis. And let's make sure we keep our custom officers where they need to be, which is making sure that drugs don't come into our island.
Ron, what's your sense of the community's concern over this?
I think for the most part, most people don't really view it as that much of a concern. For the most part, these are economic refugees. They're leaving the CNMI because they can't work in CNMI. There's no jobs because, our tourism is bad here. It's far worse there. And that's where most of their economy is. And so they were kind of stuck because of COVID for a couple of years, and they weren't making any money at all. And so that's why they're coming to Guam. And I should remind everyone, if we think that 8 or 9 at a time refugees are bad now, you should have saw it back in like 98, 99. We had whole boatloads, hundreds of Chinese coming here because the Coast Guard cutter had shut down and we didn't have any protection at that time. And so this is much more of a nuisance than anything else. But it does show that we need to enforce the policy. And I agree with Juan Carlos. We should ask for all the authorities we can get.
And it's organized. Part of the thing that's very clear is that these people have cell phone numbers, they have people that are receiving them here, and they have places to go, cars that are picking them up. We have an organized problem, and we need to deal with it.
But the point is, it's not really a problem. I mean, these are folks, like you said, they're economic refugees. So they were legally allowed to go work in the CNMI. They're here. They're not allowed to legally work here, but they've got family that's sending them money. They're not a risk. They're not criminals. They're not illegal in the sense that they're illegal. They're sort of administrative overstays. And in some cases, it's not even their fault because China wouldn't allow them back in. So it's a very different case. I mean, I was working for Governor Gutierrez when we set up those tents in the front part of DOC, when we had 900 plus folks that were illegal, that were crashing onto the shores and coming into Guam. This is a very different case. So, it's a case of a nuisance, and it's been raised to the highest levels of the federal government.
It's not a case of a nuisance.
It's being dealt with.
It's human trafficking. How do you know that these people are this? Are you talking to them? Are you working with them? There's an issue with trafficking in women and children and sex trade, and in the Northern Mariana Islands they have an issue with this with the massage parlors. We know of it. People are coming here, and you're already assuming it's just a nuisance. Ignore it. You can't ignore this. The drugs are going to come the same way.
Every single of the ones that came in, they're fingerprinted. We know who they are. We know what they're doing. There's no issues of sex crimes. I mean, it's clear, and the coordination between the federal government and the local government is very strong. The task force has fantastic connections, and they are doing everything they need to. They're tracking. They know who these people are. They're not a risk. It is an administrative problem, and it is being worked out at the highest levels with DHS.
All right, we got to move on. But another thing that is coming ashore is these international cables. The Speaker and the legislature just passed a bill, which the governor signed, which would increase the amount of money that is paid up to, I think, $100,000 per cable. And that's I guess, a significant amount of money compared to what we were getting from them previously. And this is all going to the Chamorro Land Trust. And Juan Carlos, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's as long as the people are all treated the same way and fairly, and they're not advantages being provided to one provider over the other, even playing field, I think it's fine. The real revenue source of having these landings come here is getting those new technologies and new fiber optic cables that are connecting across the world to stop in Guam. If we start trying to continue to insert more taxes and more efforts, they're going to start bypassing Guam. But for now, it's great. I don't think the amount that they were charging was ridiculous. It's okay, but I would say be very cautious that if you start trying to put a lot of impediments into it, they're going to move to a different location. The real incentive, the real power is having the fastest technology available in the world running through this island, and accessing that to create new industries and new businesses that develop here, like the drone industry that's forming on the island right now. So that's what we should be looking at, not just figuring out the $100,000 is not going to do, it's going to be the end all and be all.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. Yesterday we had the groundbreaking for GTA's new Alupang landing site for the cables, and that's going to bring in 6 new cables. So Guam has 11 now. By adding 6 more and putting up a data center to be able to do that work is going to potentially bring a ton of capability to Guam so that we can finally get into the data market. And I mean, we've had undersea cables on Guam since 1903, right? So, I mean, yeah, they're fiber optic now, but our ability to turn that into really good paying technology jobs for the people on Guam is extremely exciting. GTA is investing over $70 million to put this thing up. It'll be built in the next 2 years, and that's going to increase by 50% the number of cables that are terminating in Guam. And that's going to expand the whole data storage market, and it's really going to be an economic driver for Guam in the future. So we're really excited about that.
All right, we got to take another break, but I promise, Ron, when we come back, we're going to talk about something that you can sink your teeth into. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Stay on top of breaking news and the biggest stories of the day with NBC News Daily. Get in-depth reporting from across the country and around the world, tips to take care of your health and your wallet, and up-to-the-minute local news. NBC News Daily, weekdays on NBC.
All right, we are back once again, and let me start with this last half of our show with the campaign control of messaging. Ron, let me start with you. Is that an issue here? I mean, there are folks on either side, and the issue most recent was the Camacho Ada team had declined several debates, and I'm going to ask Juan Carlos on that, but let you set the table for us.
Sure. I'd encourage all political candidates to go to as many debates as you can, and that are legitimately operated, and I mean that sincerely. And if one side or the other has a concern over the structure or format, those concerns should be certainly looked at and used as part of the decision-making process. So, for example, in the AG's race, we allowed a write-in candidate to be part of the debate format, and that was something that was unusual, but it was different in format. And so I think that every election cycle has its own dynamics here, but I think debates are healthy. I've seen Governor Camacho debate many times. I've seen Governor Leon Guerrero debate many times. I think debates are healthy, and I think the more debates we have, the better.
Juan Carlos, your reaction to the declination, I guess you could put it, by the Camacho Ada team of those 3 debates. One was the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. The other was a local media group, which KWM was part of. And the third one was a Chamorro language group.
Right. As far as I know, the main subject of conversation this day and Patty Arroyo's show for the last 3 days has been the media debate. And what's interesting is they haven't declined the media debate. They sent a letter to the organization expressing their concerns, 4 different points they would like to address and discuss with the group about moving forward in this debate. And then all of a sudden, Patty Arroyo took that and went on the radio for a rampage and made it public and gave it to everybody and their brother, and attacked for 2 days. It doesn't help the negotiations. As far as I understand, they're still in conversations to figure out if they're going to participate or not with the organizer of the group. I have concern with some of the format, and I've been very honest about it. Last time I got invited to talk at the Patty Arroyo show was in March of 2021. I haven't stopped being the chairman of the Republican Party, and there hasn't been issues that impacted the community where the position of the party has been brought up. But for some reason, I guess I'm not in, so I'm out of the show, and it's been a constant effort. I don't understand if it's a media debate from different groups. We all know each group has their own leanings and directions. Why not have one representative of each of those media groups ask their question? Don't understand that. Don't understand where the Ray Gibson show is. Ray Gibson and his group is not part of it. I don't understand why Candy is not part of it. The two most conservative media groups in the island not participating of the process.
But can you explain? And I've seen the letter, the response from Jerry Crisostomo, who is part of the Camacho Attic campaign. Can you explain what those points are? Because from our perspective, and I'm speaking for KOAM, we would have liked to have been part of that, and I would have been the one to ask the questions. Unless you consider me biased, I don't see a reason why they had declined it at that point.
Yeah, I don't. I think that one of the requests was that each of the media outlet that was being represented.
That was what was going to happen too. The questions would come from the media outlets, and I believe it was KOAM, PNC, the Post, PDN, and what's Marvick's Pacific Islands.
But my understanding is all the questions would be read by one person, and they would deliver in the questions.
Well, actually, Jason would be the other one. Jason, they would just be the moderator. They'd be reading the questions from the reporters.
I'm just telling you what I heard, and I continue to say, not everybody is Howard Cosell, and it makes a lot more sense to have individual folks say their questions and their concerns to the candidates as they're being presented in the audience. I think that's a reasonable request. It can be denied, it can be amended, but it's part of a conversation that normally happens not in front of TV cameras. This is between a group and the parties that they're doing. It's like the Lou and Josh campaign asked that they be always team debates from now on, that all the debates be the governor and the lieutenant governor. But you don't see 50 media releases running around and people discussing that. It's internal, it's working its way through. Let them make a decision whether they're going to participate or not. My understanding is we should hear from them hopefully today. But I'm not in the conversations. I'm the party. I'm not the campaign.
Well, that's good to hear. But Ginger, you guys came out with a response.
We did. And it sounds like a gymnastics event. They're like, oh, here's this reason or that reason, and every week the reason changes why they don't want to do a debate. The bottom line is, it's really clear. People in Guam aren't stupid. The reason they don't want to do the debate is because they don't want to go into areas where they don't like the questions. They only want to debate in those areas where the audience is biased towards them and friendly. And our point is, we'll take on either all of them or none of them. Because, who is one part? A debate is about two different parties. And right now, at this stage, with 4.5 weeks to go, right? You've got one campaign that is afraid to debate in the media. I mean, talk about the most neutral, the most, widespread organization. The one organization which should have a debate with both of the candidates is the media. I mean, and everybody knows the ownership is fair, and, there's different ownership on each one of the media outlets, right? And that was turned down by the Camacho Attic team. I mean, I find that amazing. So I think at this point, it's more of a strategy. They just don't want to do a lot of the debates, and they don't want to do debates in front of people that they're not comfortable with. They're not comfortable with women. They're not comfortable with the media because they don't want the hard questions.
We're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to take one more break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. All right, we're back, and we wanted to continue the conversation. I wanted to talk about, I think, Juan Carlos, you brought up the media and media bias, and I wanted to draw distinctions between what is talk show hosts, similar to what, if you watch Fox and if you watch NBC, Fox leans right, way right, and MSNBC leans left, way left. And then there's what has been labeled the mainstream media, like the networks, the ABCs, the CBSs, and NBCs. Elaborate on what you had talked about earlier. Is there media bias, or is there perceived media bias here?
There is in different organizations and different individuals, and some of them I don't think they even realize it. But before we go there, let's agree to stop pushing language like that Governor Camacho hates women. That is so wrong and so below you. That is uncalled for. He appointed a ton of women in his administration, including Governor Lula Guerrero, to head the hospital committee. So to try to continue to argue that and to put that out there, it's ugly and it's undeserving, even for you. So don't do it anymore. Let's be honest and deal on the issues. We have crime, we have drug issues, we have inflation that people have to decide whether they're going to eat or they're going to put fuel in their car to make it to their jobs. Those are issues that people in Guam care about and want to look about and hear about. You want to talk about debates? They're going through 3 debates more at least, and we have 4 weeks. That's a debate a week. I think that's plenty of time for people. That's not hiding. That's going out there. If the Lou and Josh administration decides that they don't want to go and debate, fine. You can do that. That's your prevalence. That's your prediction of when you want to do it. That's my perceive. We want to talk about media bias and different organizations. You have the Patty Arroyo show. The governor speaks once a week on the show. You have a cabinet member almost every day. More media than any other media outlet has gotten attention from the government. I want you to compare. Just put in what you guys received here and the amount of access that they have. At the same time, no ask and no request for have Republican participation on her show. What?
But I want to draw a distinction between my friend Patty Arroyo. She is a talk show host,
Yes.
right? She was a good reporter, an excellent journalist, but she's moved on to be a talk show host. And there's a difference, and that's one of the things that I want to make clear, that talk show host is different from a reporter, right? A reporter is unbiased, as best as they can be, and a talk show host brings up things to elicit conversation. Okay, and Ron, you know the distinction, right? And what are your thoughts on this whole debate issue?
Sure. So first, I should make clear, I was one of the first men to join the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce. They're a great group.
Good you.
I've been, in fact, they're more fun than the other chamber. Just saying. I think that having debates is good, as I said earlier, but also. I don't think the public sees a distinction between news and talk shows anymore. I think that line has been heavily blurred. I think that just the whole validity of the profession of journalism has been called into question in recent years. And in 2016, President Trump called out, I forgot which the reporter's name was, called out one of the moderators in the debate, made a big fuss over it, and they ended up switching that lady out. So I think this is nothing new, but I think you'd make a great moderator, Nestor. I think we should pull you in. Yeah,
well, thanks, Ron.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Ginger, we got about 60 seconds left. Okay, your response?
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, it's about being transparent. It's about not being afraid to go to the Chamorro debate and show respect to the language. Felix Camacho debated Underwood at the Chamorro debate. Why doesn't he want to debate Lulian Guerrero at the Chamorro debate? That to me is, I don't understand why, but the answer is not very satisfying. So the answers have never been satisfying. And the one thing that's important is, we're not going to be dictated to which debates will happen and which won't. And that's exactly what Felix Camacho is trying to do. We said, we'll do them all. And he said, oh, no, well, I don't want to do this one and I don't want to do this one. We're just going to do this one. And so what? We're only going to do the debates he wants to do? That doesn't make sense to me. And it's about setting the ground rules. And it's about, making a stand. There's a lot of opportunities, and we're going to make ourselves completely available to the people of Guam in as many fora as possible. And one last thing, the reason that the governor and the cabinet members are on the K57 show all the time is because they're the government. The people deserve that. During Felix's time, he hid from the government. Half the time they couldn't reach him to be able to get a comment. This administration is responsive. Today they were talking about the health insurance issues with the head of the
Department of Administration. There was a time when they were boycotting this station too. But
it's important. And being available and being able to provide those answers to the people of Guam as often as they can is something that's really important to the Lou and Josh campaign and to the administration as well. And so they're doing that, and they'll do that on any forum. They will do that here on KUAM, especially, any of the media that's out there. They'll go ahead and be available.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time as always. We never have enough time. Thanks for joining us. Juan Carlos Benitez, Dr. Ron, and my good friend Ginger. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be be here again next week. Please join us.